My name is Mia Carter. I'm 30 years old now, living in Los Angeles, working in digital marketing. But sometimes, when the nights are too quiet or the smell of baked apples drifts from some cafe, I find myself pulled back to a different time, back to a little ranch house in a Chicago suburb where everything seems simple, golden, and safe. Or at least that's how it looked on the surface. Those days felt like a dream, but Sophia's glare was a crack in the frame. I can still hear the thud of the basketball against the concrete in our backyard. The sun was hot but soft, the kind that made the air shimmer. My dad, David Carter, tall, broad-shouldered, still in his construction boots from a long day, stood a few feet away, shouting encouragement as I dribbled and shot toward the hoop nailed above the garage. My hands were small, my shots clumsy, but he cheered like I was already in the NBA. "Nice one, Mia! You're getting better every day." His deep voice carried pride that made my chest swell. I missed most of my shots, but every time the ball brushed through the net, his grin spread wide. And when I stopped to catch my breath, sweat sticking to my bangs, he crouched down to my level, tapping a finger against my forehead. "Mia, you're going to be a star with that brain of yours. Don't ever forget that." That was Dad. He never saw me as just a kid fooling around. He saw potential. To a little girl, there's no sweeter magic than hearing your father say you're destined for something. I held on to those words like treasures. Inside the house, another rhythm was playing. The clatter of mixing bowls, the whir of a hand mixer, and then the unmistakable rich scent of cinnamon and apples. My mom, Anna, was baking again. She had a way of filling the entire house with warmth, not just from the oven, but from the softness of her smile. Neighbors would drift by, almost like the smell itself pulled them in, and she always had extra plates ready. It was impossible not to feel loved when she was around. The kitchen window was cracked open, and every now and then the breeze carried the scent outside to where Dad and I played. The mix of cut grass, hot asphalt, and fresh pie, it's still engraved in my memory. For me, that was happiness, a complete picture. Dad outside with me, Mom inside with her pies, nothing broken, nothing missing. But there was always another set of eyes in that picture. My sister, Sophia. 4 years older, already entering her teens when I was still clumsy in my sneakers. I'd glance toward the porch, and there she'd be, arms crossed, leaning against the railing. Her expression wasn't soft. It wasn't encouraging. It was something colder, heavier, something I couldn't name back then. Jealousy? Resentment? Her eyes followed me like shadows followed light. Sometimes, when I made a basket and Dad cheered, I'd catch her smirking, but not the kind of smirk that says, "Good job." It was sharper, like she resented the sound of his laughter aimed at me. And when I ran inside, sweaty and beaming, Mom offering me the first slice of pie to cool on the counter, Sophia's gaze always cut through the sweetness. She rarely said much in those moments, but silence can be loud when it carries that much weight. As a child, I didn't know how to process it. I only knew that when Dad ruffled my hair and called me his star, Sophia's jaw tightened. I only knew that the warmth of my mother's pies didn't melt the chill of her stare. It confused me. Weren't sisters supposed to cheer for each other? Wasn't family supposed to be the safest place? Looking back, it was the first warning, the smallest tremor before the quake. Because envy doesn't stay small forever. It festers, it grows teeth. And Sophia, she learned early how to sharpen them. I remember one particular afternoon. The sun had dipped lower, painting the backyard in that honey-colored glow that makes everything look perfect. Dad had gone inside to grab water, and I kept bouncing the ball, practicing layups. When I turned, Sophia had stepped off the porch and closer to me. She wasn't smiling. She picked up the ball where it had rolled to her feet and held it for a long moment, her fingers tight around the orange leather. "Why do you always need to be the center of attention?" she asked, her voice flat. I froze. It wasn't really a question. She tossed the ball back, harder than she needed to, and walked away before I could answer. I watched her disappear through the back door, the smell of pie growing stronger as she vanished inside. That moment stuck with me. I didn't understand it fully, but it left a splinter under my skin, the kind you can't see but always feel. Of course, to the outside world, we were the picture-perfect family, the hard-working father, the gentle mother, 2 daughters, the house with the white siding, the basketball hoop, the apple pies. But I knew, even then, that not all cracks show on the surface. Sometimes they hide behind a smile. Sometimes they stare from the porch with cold, unblinking eyes. People say childhood memories fade, but not mine. I can still hear the applause of the ball hitting concrete, the echo of Dad's laughter, the oven timer dinging from inside, and I can still feel the chill of Sophia's silence. If I close my eyes, it all plays like a film reel, bright, warm, golden, until her glare slices through the frame. Those days felt like a dream, but dreams, as we all know, don't last forever, and some dreams turn into nightmares before you even realize you're awake. I was 11 years old when the brightness in my world began to dim. The memories of basketball in the backyard and Mom's apple pies still lingered in the air, but they were quickly drowned out by the sterile hum of machines in a hospital room. I remember the chill of the linoleum floor beneath my sneakers, the smell of antiseptic that clung to my clothes, and the pale light that never seemed to change, no matter what time of day it was. My mother's hand felt impossibly fragile in mine, her once strong fingers now bird-like, her knuckles prominent under paper-thin skin. She tried to smile at me, and for a moment I almost believed she could still bake another pie when we got home. But the smile slipped too quickly, replaced by exhaustion. The doctors didn't think I understood. They would stand near the door whispering in low voices, but their words weren't as hidden as they thought. Stage 4, chances aren't good. Aggressive. We'll try to make her comfortable. Comfortable. That word pressed itself into my 11-year-old brain like a brand. It was the kind of word adults used when they couldn't say the one that mattered most. Dying. Sophia never came with me to those visits. She claimed hospitals made her sick, but I knew even then it wasn't just that. She didn't want to face it. Dad, though, he was there, standing tall but hollow-eyed, his construction boots still streaked with dust, gripping the railing at the side of Mom's bed. He rarely spoke, except to say, "Anna, I'm here." But every word cracked. His presence was solid, his silence unbearable. And me? I sat by her bed, holding her hand, pretending I could keep her tethered to us if I just didn't let go. Weeks blurred into months. Her voice grew weaker, her laughter disappeared, and her hugs, once warm and enveloping, became careful, fleeting things, as if she was afraid she'd break. One night I lay my head against the edge of the mattress, the steady beep of the monitor lulling me into a shallow sleep. I woke to find her watching me, her eyes glassy but soft. She brushed my hair back and whispered, "Mia, you're strong, stronger than you know." It was the last time she said anything to me. The next morning, the monitors screamed, and then they were silent, too silent. When Mom died, the house itself seemed to die with her. The kitchen no longer smelled of apples or cinnamon, only of dust and dishes that piled in the sink. The curtains stayed half drawn, shutting out sunlight. Dad left early in the mornings, coming home long after dark, his shoulders stooped, his face unreadable. Work consumed him. It was easier to build bridges and skyscrapers than to face the ruins inside his own home. And in that emptiness, Sophia stepped forward. At first, it looked like responsibility. She started cooking, clattering pans loudly in the kitchen as though her noise could replace Mom's presence. She told Dad she'd take care of the groceries, the laundry, the bills. She slipped into Mom's role so seamlessly it frightened me. But her version of taking care didn't leave room for me. She waved me away when I tried to help. "You're too young. Go do your homework." Or, "Don't make a mess, Mia." I just cleaned. Every time she spoke, her voice was sharper, older, as though she'd aged 10 years overnight. I tried to cling to the one piece of family I still had, Dad. Some nights I'd wait by the TV, flipping channels until the sound filled the silence. When he finally sank into the armchair beside me, his eyes heavy, I'd lean against him, hoping he'd wrap an arm around me like he used to. Sometimes he did. Most nights he just sat, staring at the screen, too tired to notice how badly I needed him. Still, I stayed, because even his silence was better than being alone with Sophia's cold watchfulness. Our house became a hollow shell. The laughter was gone. The music Mom used to play on Saturday mornings was gone. Even the smell of fresh laundry was gone, replaced by musty air. It was as if her absence seeped into the walls themselves, leaving everything gray and lifeless. Sophia seemed to thrive in the void. She set the rules, deciding when we ate, what we ate, even which shows played on the television. And when Dad thanked her for keeping things together, her eyes flicked to me with a look I'll never forget, victorious, almost smug. I was the little sister she could shove to the side, the child who didn't understand, the burden. She had the authority now, and she knew it. Sometimes I'd creep into Mom's closet late at night, burying my face in one of her scarves, inhaling what faint trace of her perfume still lingered. I'd whisper into the dark, "Mom, I miss you. What do I do now?" But of course there was no answer, only silence. Mom's absence left our house hollow, like a shell without a soul. And in that emptiness, Sophia's shadow stretched longer and darker, pushing me further into the corners. I didn't know it then, but this was just the beginning. She wasn't just filling the void, she was claiming it. And I was about to learn what it meant to be erased in your own home. The kitchen felt smaller that evening, crowded not by walls, but by Sophia's presence. She moved around like she owned every inch of it, banging pots, slamming drawers, stirring a pot of sauce that smelled scorched. The yellow light above the sink buzzed faintly, casting long shadows on the cluttered counter. Plates with dried crumbs and half-empty glasses lined the sink, the air thick with a sour mix of tomato and dishwater. I stood near the counter, twisting a dish towel nervously, waiting for the right moment to ask about Dad. He had left early that morning, and the emptiness he left behind was something I couldn't shake. I just wanted to know when he might come home. Maybe we could sit together, like we used to, watching a show while I leaned into his armchair. But before the words even left my mouth, Sophia's head snapped toward me, her eyes sharp as glass. She set the spoon down with a loud clang and crossed her arms. "Stop being so needy, Mia. Dad doesn't need your whining." Her tone sliced through me. The sting wasn't just in the words, but in the way she spat them, like I was something to scrape off her shoe. My chest tightened, my throat ached, but I forced myself not to cry. I wanted to shout back, to tell her I wasn't needy, that I just missed him. But her glare pinned me in place. Sophia had perfected that expression, the one that told me resistance was useless. So I stood there in silence, swallowing my words, while the only sounds were the bubbling sauce and the hum of the fridge. She turned back to her pot, smug in her victory, her shoulders squaring like a queen reclaiming her throne. She thrived in control. Every time she reminded Dad of how much she was doing, keeping the house together, making sure we survived, her pride swelled, and every time she shut me down, I shrank further into the background, fading like dust in corners no one bothered to clean. Later that night, when she retreated upstairs with her plate, leaving me to face the stack of dirty dishes, I lingered in the kitchen. The overhead light buzzed on, flickering every so often, throwing shadows that seemed to breathe against the walls. I scrubbed plates slowly, absent-mindedly, Sophia's words still echoing in my head. Needy, whining. I dried my hands on the same dish towel I had twisted earlier, and suddenly the thought hit me. I needed something of Mom's, something real, something that would remind me I wasn't invisible in this house, that no longer felt like home. The silence guided me upstairs, past the dark hallway where family pictures hung crooked on the walls, their glass smudged with fingerprints. My feet creaked on the stairs as I climbed to the attic door, the one we rarely opened. The handle was cold, dust caking its edges. I pulled it slowly and the hinges groaned like they hadn't been touched in years. The attic air hit me, thick and stale, carrying the smell of old wood and mothballs. It was darker than I expected, the single bulb dangling overhead sputtering to life only after I tugged the chain. Its weak glow barely reached the corners, where cobwebs stretched like veils between forgotten boxes. Dust floated in the air, catching the light in lazy swirls. I stepped carefully, my sneakers crunching on scattered debris, bits of old newspapers, yellowed and brittle. My fingers brushed against stacks of books, cracked photo albums and jars filled with buttons and nails. Each step deeper felt like walking into another time, a place frozen since Mom's absence. Then, tucked in the corner, I spotted an old nightstand, its surface scratched, its drawer handle loose. Something about it called to me. I crouched, tugging gently until the drawer creaked open with a puff of dust. Inside lay a folded piece of paper, edges frayed, yellowed with age. My heart jumped into my throat. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. Mom's. I hesitated, fingers trembling, afraid the paper would crumble if I touched it. Slowly, I unfolded it. The attic seemed to hold its breath with me. The ink had faded slightly, but her looping script was clear, each stroke familiar. I had seen this handwriting on the notes she'd tuck into my school lunches, on grocery lists taped to the fridge, on birthday cards she signed with love. But these words were different. Mia, if you're reading this, I need you to remember. Not everyone in this house wants the best for you. Sophia struggles with jealousy she doesn't understand. I tried to guide her, but I fear it won't be enough. Protect yourself. Someday you'll see the truth. The words blurred as my eyes filled with tears. A warning. From Mom. Written before she was gone. She had known. She had seen something in Sophia, something darker than I had wanted to believe. I read it again, and again, my pulse hammering in my ears. The attic felt colder, the light flickering harder, shadows creeping across the walls as if they too leaned closer to read over my shoulder. My mind spun. Why hadn't she told me this before? Had she tried? Was there more? A hidden will? Another letter? What truth had she meant for me to uncover? My fingers shook as I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into my pocket, close to my chest as though it could shield me. The weight of it pressed against me with every step back down the attic stairs. Each creak of the wood sounded louder, like the house itself warning me not to reveal what I'd found. Back in my room, I sat on the bed, the letter lying across my lap. The air felt heavy, as though the walls were closing in. Sophia's words from earlier stabbed at me. Stop being so needy, Mia. But now, Mom's voice rose above them, whispering from the grave. Not everyone in this house wants the best for you. That thought terrified me, because it confirmed what I had always felt but never admitted, that Sophia's cold stares, her sharp words, her need to push me aside, weren't just sibling rivalry. They were deeper, more dangerous, something Mom herself feared wouldn't be fixed. As I lay down that night, clutching the letter under my pillow, my heart pounded with unease. Sleep didn't come easily. My mind replayed her handwriting, every loop of ink like a secret I hadn't yet uncovered. And the question that haunted me as my eyes finally drifted shut was this. If Mom had been so worried, what exactly had she left behind for me to find? Mom's letter felt like a whisper from the grave, warning me about Sophia. And I knew, deep down, this was only the beginning of a secret that would unravel everything. The spotlight on stage burned hot against my skin, but it wasn't nerves that made me tremble. It was the silence in the one place where I needed noise, the empty seat I had saved for Dad. My fingers tightened around the certificate, the edges cutting lightly into my palm as I scanned the sea of faces. Families cheered, parents stood proudly with cameras raised, siblings clapped with genuine excitement. But where I wanted most to look, there was nothing but absence. A void. The applause swelled, echoing in the high ceilings of the high school auditorium. It should have been deafening in a good way, a wave of joy carrying me higher. Instead, it hollowed me out. A girl beside me ran off stage and straight into her mother's arms, the two of them swaying together in celebration. Another boy's father shouted, "That's my son!" while pounding the air with his fist. The smell of perfume, cologne, and even the sugary frosting of congratulatory cupcakes in the back made the whole event feel like a giant family embrace. Except I stood outside of it, smiling weakly for the judge's camera, my chest aching. I wanted just one smile from Dad, one proud look that said, "That's my daughter." Instead, all I could picture was the smirk Sophia had given me that morning in the kitchen. She had leaned lazily against the counter, arms folded across her chest, watching me stir my cereal like she already knew a secret. "Don't expect Dad tonight," she said, her voice casual, almost bored, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. My spoon stopped midair. Why not? Her lips curled into that mocking half-smile. "Because I told him you'd be too nervous if he came, that you didn't want the pressure." The spoon clattered against the bowl, milk splashing onto the table. My heart lurched. "Why would you say that?" She shrugged, turning her back to me, ponytail swishing as she grabbed her bag. "You always need the spotlight, don't you, Mia? Maybe it's better if you learn to shine on your own." The words had pierced me then, but I didn't want to believe her. I told myself Dad would never buy such a lie. But when I stood under those stage lights, staring at his empty seat, I knew she had been telling the truth. He trusted her. He trusted her more than me. By the time I walked off stage, the weight of the certificate felt unbearable, heavier than any trophy should. My classmates huddled with their families, arms wrapped around them, camera flashes painting their happiness in bright bursts of light. I lingered near the edge, forcing my smile to stay as I shuffled toward the reception table. The frosting on the cake smelled sweet, almost sickly, as if mocking the bitterness sitting in my throat. I took a piece and held it without eating, pretending to be part of the crowd, pretending I wasn't alone. When the event finally ended, I slipped out quietly, the night air cold against my damp cheeks. I walked home with the certificate pressed against my chest, the Chicago wind biting my skin, the distant sound of cars humming through the dark. By the time I stepped through the front door, the house felt emptier than the auditorium had. I placed the certificate carefully on the kitchen table, the golden seal catching the dim light from the lamp overhead. I imagined Dad walking in, seeing it, realizing what he'd missed. Maybe then he'd understand. Maybe then he'd ask me what had happened, and I'd finally hear the pride in his voice. But the clock ticked past 10, then 11, then midnight. The refrigerator hummed, the old wall clock groaned with every shift of its hands, and the front door never opened. My body ached from waiting, but my mind ached more. I sat in the silence, anger bubbling up like a storm I couldn't release. I imagined myself storming into Sophia's room, shoving the certificate in her face. I wanted to shout at her, to force her to admit what she'd done, to watch her mask of control finally crack. But when I stood in the hall staring at the faint sliver of light seeping from under her door, my courage drained. She wanted me to fight. She wanted me to come unglued, and I couldn't give her that satisfaction. So I went to bed, still clutching the certificate like a shield, as if the paper itself could protect me from her cruelty. I stared at the ceiling, my chest tight, questions swirling like smoke. Why was she so jealous? Why did she hate every flicker of happiness I tried to hold on to? And why couldn't Dad see through her lies? The next morning, I placed the certificate on the fridge with a magnet, hoping it would finally earn me some acknowledgement. Sophia walked by, eyes flicking over at once. She didn't stop, didn't congratulate me. Instead, she smirked as she reached for her coffee mug and muttered, just loud enough for me to hear, "Always needing the spotlight." Her words cut deeper than the night before. They clung to me, replaying over and over like a broken record. It was then I realized her lies weren't careless. They were intentional, sharp as blades. She wasn't just taking Dad's attention. She was carving me out of it, piece by piece, until there was nothing left. I wanted Dad's proud smile. I wanted his voice steady and warm, saying he was proud of me. Instead, all I saw when I closed my eyes was Sophia's smirk in the kitchen, dripping with satisfaction. That night in the auditorium wasn't just about an empty chair. It was about the truth I could no longer deny. Sophia had learned how to manipulate Dad, and he was letting her. And if she could take that from me, my one shining moment, what else was she willing to steal? Resentment smoldered in my chest, hotter than grief. It wasn't just sadness anymore, it was fury. But even with that fire burning, a part of me clung desperately to hope. Hope that one day Dad would see me clearly beyond her lies. Hope that his proud smile wasn't lost forever. Until then, I kept my awards close, holding them like armor, bracing myself for the battles ahead. Because deep down, I already knew Sophia's sabotage was only the beginning. The summer I turned 18, my bedroom in Chicago felt like it was splitting in two, half filled with the life I was leaving behind, half with the promise of something new. Suitcases lay gaping on the floor, spilling folded jeans, stacks of shirts, and my sketchbooks tucked carefully between them like fragile treasure. The posters on the walls sagged, their edges curling, as though they were tired of clinging. Even the air seemed restless, heavy with dust, warmed by the July sun pressing through the thin curtains. My pencils and brushes, once scattered across the desk in chaos, were lined up neatly for the first time, as if I wanted to prove to myself that this was a clean break. Dad appeared briefly at the doorway, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed. He looked tired, distant, the weight of work and life sagging his shoulders. "Proud of you, Mia," he said, though his eyes flicked away too quickly, landing somewhere on the floorboards. "UCLA it's a big deal." His voice carried no warmth, no excitement, only obligation. Before I could respond, he was gone, retreating down the hall with heavy steps that echoed long after the silence returned. Then came Sophia. She didn't just glance in, she stayed, her body filling the doorway, arms folded, lips curled into that smirk that always managed to shrink me. "Off to California," she said, her tone dripping with mock sweetness. "Guess we'll see how long you last before you come running back." I tightened my grip on the suitcase handle, the zipper teeth glinting under the dull light. "I'm not coming back, Sophia. Not unless I want to." Her smirk deepened into something sharper. "We'll see." That was her goodbye. Less a farewell, more a warning. A reminder that no matter how far I went, she had ways of reaching me. Leaving Chicago felt like exhaling after years of holding my breath. The airport blurred into a whirlwind of announcements and rolling suitcases. The flight stretched endlessly across clouds. But stepping into my UCLA dorm cracked something open inside me. Sunlight spilled through wide windows onto a bare desk waiting for my pencils and notebooks. Outside, campus buzzed with energy. Bikes zipping by, backpacks bouncing, the scent of roasted coffee drifting from a cafe across the quad. It was noisy, alive, and mine. For the first time, I wasn't just Sophia's little sister or Dad's overlooked daughter. I was simply Mia. I threw myself into everything. Lectures filled my mornings, design critiques my afternoons, and late nights became a blur of graphite smudges and glowing screens. My exhaustion felt purposeful. Every project was fuel, every good grade a step further from the shadows of home. I I worked like someone trying to prove she deserved every inch of freedom. And people noticed. Professors began to linger at my desk, flipping through my sketches with real interest. One of them, Professor Lane, was especially encouraging. After class one afternoon, he held my portfolio in his hands as though it weighed more than paper. "Mia," he said, his eyes steady on me, "your work already has something most students take years to find: voice. If you keep pushing, I can see you fitting into a top design firm." My chest swelled. It wasn't just about the compliment, it was about being seen, truly seen for the first time. Sophia couldn't touch this, or so I thought. But freedom, I was learning, still has shadows, and some stretch farther than you ever imagine. One evening, as the sun slid low and painted my dorm walls in amber, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. "Mia." A calm but uneasy voice said, "This is Professor Lane. I wanted to check something with you." My pulse quickened. "Of course, Professor. What's wrong?" There was a pause, the line humming faintly. "I received an email from you this morning, or at least it looked like it was from you. It said you wanted to withdraw your application for the internship, that you weren't interested anymore." He hesitated, lowering his voice. "But it didn't sound like you." My stomach dropped. My pencil slipped from my fingers and rolled across the desk, hitting the floor with a hollow clatter. "Professor, I never sent that email." "That's what I thought," he said, steady but grave. "I wanted to confirm directly. Someone tried to kill your internship. Any idea who?" My breath caught in my throat. My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles ached. There was only one person cruel and jealous enough to do something like this. Only one shadow that always found a way to reach me: Sophia. But then the fear deepened. How had she known about the internship at all? Only a handful of people were aware: my professors, a few classmates. Someone must have told her. My chest constricted as the realization sank in. Someone in this new world of mine had opened a door for her, intentionally or not. I don't know, Professor. But it wasn't me. My voice shook, though I tried to steady it. He exhaled softly, his tone turning firm. "I believe you, Mia. I've seen your work. You've earned this. Don't let whoever did this take it from you." The line went quiet after he hung up, but his words clanged in my head. "Someone tried to kill your internship." I sat frozen in the fading light, the hum of voices drifting faintly through the open window, the air thick with the smell of cut grass and car exhaust from the street below. My sketchbook lay open, blank page glaring up at me. I pressed my pencil against it, but no lines came. All I could see was Sophia's smirk, burned into my memory. All I could hear was her voice from years ago, sharp and smug. "You always need the spotlight, don't you, Mia?" But this wasn't about the spotlight anymore. This was about survival, independence. I had fought to escape once, and I couldn't let her pull me back now. Still, the question gnawed at me, relentless. Who had fed her my contacts? Who here, among my classmates and professors, had unknowingly or deliberately let her in? That night, I lay in my narrow dorm bed, sheets tangled around me, the glow of campus lights leaking through the blinds. My jaw clenched tight, my fists curled until my nails dug crescents into my palms. The letter from Mom echoed in my mind, her warning from the grave. "Protect yourself. Someday you'll see the truth." Sophia's reach wasn't just long, it was precise, calculated. She wasn't acting blindly, she was hunting. And if she could infiltrate this far, if she could worm her way into my life here, across the country, what else was she capable of? Sophia's shadow had chased me all the way to California, and as the night pressed in, one thought consumed me. What was her endgame? By the time sophomore year rolled around, my dorm room had become an extension of myself. Chaotic, cluttered, and alive with possibility. Sketches and drafts, taped crookedly to the walls, curled at the edges from the California sun. Coffee cups gathered in huddles on my desk, the faint, bitter smell clinging to the air. The hum of my laptop was a constant companion, its blue glow spilling across stacks of design books and smudged pencils. Nights bled into mornings, but the exhaustion was mine, earned, and it meant I was building a life that no one, not even Sophia, could take credit for. One night, bleary-eyed and half-buried in papers, I logged into an online coding elective I'd added on a whim. The screen flickered, faces appearing in neat squares, and then one square lit up with a boy leaning toward the camera. His dark hair fell into his eyes, and his grin, wide, unguarded, brightened the room more than my lamp ever could. "Hey, partner," he said, voice light and easy. "Looks like we're stuck together this semester." That was Ethan. At first, it was just assignments. He'd write lines of code, I'd design the graphics, and somehow we made it work. But soon the assignment stretched into late-night conversations. He joked about my coffee addiction. I teased him about the way he downed cans of soda while debugging. We laughed through the stress, filling silence that had once felt suffocating with something warmer. One evening, while we worked on a project, I mentioned, almost by accident, how far I'd come from Chicago, how different this world felt compared to the one I left behind. Ethan's face softened. "You've built a whole new life here, Mia. You should meet my family sometime. They'll love you." And he wasn't just being polite. He meant it. The first time I visited his house, I knew it was different. It wasn't grand, but it breathed warmth. The front door opened and Karen, Ethan's mom, wrapped me in a hug before I could even speak. The smell of baked lasagna floated into the evening air, rich and comforting. Her eyes crinkled when she smiled, the kind of smile that made you feel known. "Mia, honey," she said, her voice the gentle authority of a lifelong teacher. "Any friend of Ethan's is family here." Inside, the house was alive. Framed photographs lined the walls, Christmas mornings with torn wrapping paper, graduations with lopsided caps, messy birthday cakes with lopsided candles. It wasn't perfect, but it was full. Laughter clung to the corners like perfume. Then there was Robert, Ethan's uncle. He moved slowly, a limp marking his steps, but his presence filled the room. His eyes, sharp beneath bushy brows, studied me in a way that felt both unnerving and safe, as if he could see the parts of me I kept hidden. Over dinner, he leaned forward, his voice gravelly but warm. "You've got a fire, Mia. Don't let anyone snuff it out." The words landed deep, sparking something I hadn't felt in years, validation. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't shrinking under someone else's shadow. I was being seen. That evening at their table, voices overlapped, plates clinked. Karen nudged me to take seconds while Ethan teased me for eating faster than him. It was loud, messy, imperfect, and it wrapped around me like a blanket I didn't know I needed. For once, I let myself breathe. But shadows have a way of seeping in, even into the brightest rooms. A few weeks later, while sorting through Ethan's things in his room, he had asked me to grab a spare notebook. I found an old camera buried in a drawer. "Use it," he had told me once when I mentioned wanting to film design inspirations. Curious, I charged it and played back the footage. It began innocently enough. Shaky shots of his dog running in the yard, blurry clips of holiday dinners, the kind of home movies everyone has. But then, midway through, the screen shook, and a faint voice threaded through static. "She can't hide forever." I froze, my whole body stiffening as the words crackled again. The voice was distorted, almost swallowed by static, but it was there, cold, intentional. My skin prickled, my pulse thundered in my ears. I replayed it once, twice. Each time the whisper seemed clearer, sharper, until it felt like it was aimed directly at me. Who had recorded this? Was it old? Some random glitch? Or was someone watching me now? My stomach twisted as Sophia's face rose in my mind, her smirk, her eyes glittering with control. Could she have found a way to reach me, even here, through cameras, through people I trusted? The walls of my dorm seemed to close in, the glow of my laptop suddenly too exposed, like a window left wide open. The next evening, I carried the camera to Ethan's house, my palms clammy. My voice cracked as I held it out. "Ethan, do you know what's on this?" He frowned, brows knitting as he took it. "What are you talking about?" Karen, noticing the shake in my hands, touched my shoulder gently. "Sweetheart, you look pale. Sit down." Robert leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as Ethan pressed play. The static hissed, and then the whisper slithered out again. "She can't hide forever." The room fell silent. The warmth that had embraced me days earlier drained in an instant, replaced with a cold unease that prickled at the back of my neck. Ethan's grip on the camera tightened. "This isn't me. I didn't record this." His voice cracked with both confusion and frustration. Robert's gaze landed on me, heavy but steady. "Whoever it was," he said slowly, "they wanted you to hear it." The words echoed in my chest, sinking like a stone in deep water. Whoever it was, they weren't careless. This was deliberate. That night, lying awake in their guest room, I listened to the faint clatter of dishes as Karen cleaned up, the muffled tap of Ethan's keyboard from down the hall. Those sounds should have comforted me. Instead, the whisper replayed in my mind like a curse. She can't hide forever. Ethan's family was my safe haven, the kind of love and belonging I had craved for years. But that voice, that single whisper, sent chills down my spine. Hope and unease wrestled inside me, colliding until they blurred together. And the question I couldn't escape was this: had Sophia found a new way to reach me? And if she had, how much further would she go? 5 years slipped by faster than I could ever have imagined. Ethan and I had grown into each other's lives so seamlessly that the thought of being without him felt impossible. We had carved out a world together in Los Angeles. Quiet mornings spent over coffee, late nights working side by side, his laughter cutting through the stress of deadlines. I thought I knew what happiness was. But I didn't realize he had been holding back something even bigger. That day, he suggested a picnic at Malibu. I assumed it was one of his sweet gestures to pull me away from my laptop, but when we spread the blanket across the sand and the sun began its slow descent over the horizon, I noticed something in him, a nervous energy. His smile was softer, less casual, like it carried a secret he could barely keep contained. The beach stretched wide and golden, the waves whispering against the shore. The scent of salt clung to the air, mingling with the faint sweetness of sunscreen left on our skin. The sky was alive, strokes of amber melting into blush pink and deep violet. The sound of gulls overhead mingled with the crash of water, a symphony of life against the stillness building inside me. We ate. We laughed. We let the ocean wrap around our words until the horizon burned brighter than fire. Then Ethan shifted. He dropped to one knee, the sand crunching beneath him, his hands trembling just enough for me to notice. "Mia," he said, his voice steady though his chest rose and fell quickly. "You've been my partner in everything. You've shown me what home really feels like. I don't want to spend another day without knowing you'll be my family. Will you marry me?" The world tilted. My breath caught in my throat, my heart pounding so hard it rattled in my ears. He opened the box, and the diamond inside caught the last of the sun, flaring like a tiny star against the ocean backdrop. "Yes," I whispered, my voice breaking, then stronger, laughing through tears. "Yes." He slid the ring onto my finger, and the waves roared as if the world itself was celebrating. The breeze whipped through my hair, tangling it across my face. But all I saw was Ethan, his eyes glassy with relief and joy. We kissed, and for a moment, nothing else existed. I thought, finally, the shadows of my past had lost their grip. Finally, this was the life I had fought so hard for. But joy, I've learned, rarely comes without a shadow. That night, back in our apartment, I called Dad. My hand shook as I dialed, the ring glittering in the lamplight. He picked up after a few rings, his voice flat, as though I had interrupted something mundane. "Hello? Dad?" I said, smiling so hard my cheeks ached. "I have news. Ethan proposed. I'm engaged." Silence stretched on the line, just long enough for hope to start slipping. Then his response came, clipped and emotionless. "Congrats. When's the date?" The words pierced deeper than I expected. No warmth, no excitement, not even surprise. Just a sterile acknowledgement, as if I had told him what I ate for dinner. The silence afterward rang louder than the waves had hours earlier. I forced a laugh, though my throat felt tight. "We haven't set one yet, but I wanted you to be the first to know." Well, keep me posted." His tone never shifted. He didn't ask about Ethan, the ring, the proposal, nothing. Then the line went dead. I sat frozen, the phone heavy in my hand. Ethan watched me from across the couch, concern etched across his face. My chest burned, confusion and hurt tangling together. Why was his voice colder than ever? Why did I still feel like I was begging for scraps of approval, even now when my life was finally beginning to bloom? Before I could even process, my phone buzzed again. A new message lit up the screen, from Sophia. "OMG sis, so thrilled for you. Congrats, I can't believe it. By the way, I found something in Mom's letter." My blood turned to ice. Her words, dripping with fake excitement, carried poison in their core. She had slid a blade inside her congratulations, hiding it behind exclamation points and emojis. Mom's letter, the one I had found years ago, tucked away in a dusty drawer, a warning from beyond the grave, the one that whispered Sophia's jealousy and danger into the quiet. I stared at the text, my pulse spiking. What had she found? What was she holding back? Was there more to that letter than I had ever seen? Another page? Another truth buried deeper than I knew? And why now? Why the very moment my future finally felt within reach, did she choose to claw me back into her storm? Ethan's hand slid over mine, steady and warm. "What's wrong?" I turned the screen toward him. My throat was dry, words refusing to form. His jaw tightened as he read, shaking his head. "She's trying to get in your head again, Mia. Don't let her." But how could I not? The shadows of her words wrapped themselves around me, whispering in sync with the memory of Mom's letter. Found something in Mom's letter. What could it mean? Was Sophia bluffing? Or had Mom left behind something even more damning, something Sophia could twist to her advantage? The questions clawed at me, tearing through the fragile joy I held. I looked down at the ring glittering on my finger, so full of promise, and yet suddenly it felt fragile, like glass. One sharp word from Sophia, one subtle manipulation, and it could all shatter. Inside, my thoughts spiraled. Ethan's ring was my future, but Sophia's text was a dark cloud rolling in, threatening to drown the light. And for the first time since Ethan slipped that ring on my finger, I wondered, would Dad let her steal this from me too? Planning a July wedding on Santa Monica Beach was supposed to feel like a dream, and in many ways it did. The ocean stretched endlessly, a blue canvas shimmering with sunlight, and the thought of saying my vows to Ethan with waves crashing behind us gave me a kind of joy I had never known. But under every sparkle of hope lurked a shadow I couldn't ignore. Sophia's shadow. The first fitting was at a small bridal shop tucked along a side street near the beach. The glass windows glowed golden in the afternoon sun, and inside the scent of pressed fabric and faint lavender hung in the air. I stepped into the lace gown, the fabric brushing against my skin like whispers, delicate and fragile, catching the light with every subtle move. When I turned toward the mirror, Karen was already watching me, her hands pressed together in front of her chest, her eyes shining with tears that made her look years younger. "You're gonna be a gorgeous bride, Mia," she said softly, her voice steady but trembling at the edges. "Your mom would have loved this." Her words hit me like a tide rolling over warm sand, comforting, but almost too much to bear. For just a moment, I let myself imagine Mom standing there, laughing at how awkwardly I held the bouquet, adjusting the veil slipping down my hair. My throat tightened, but Karen's presence kept me grounded. She smiled at me like I was her own daughter, and when she clapped her hands as I twirled under the lights, I almost let myself believe this was the family I was meant to have all along. But safety never lasted long where Sophia was concerned. Later that night, I curled up on the couch in my apartment, scrolling absent-mindedly through my phone, letting the soft hum of the city drift in through the window. That's when I saw it. Sophia's Instagram story. A champagne glass, bubbles rising and bursting like fireworks, with a caption scrawled across it in her sharp handwriting, "Big event coming soon, can't wait." My stomach dropped. The timing was too perfect to be innocent, too deliberate to ignore. Was she mocking me? Was this her way of planting doubt, of making sure my wedding glow never burned too bright? I stared at the glowing screen until the letters blurred, until they seemed to taunt me directly. I tossed the phone aside, but it buzzed again almost immediately. I picked it up, expecting more of her games, but froze when I saw the sender. Dad. Only, it wasn't new. It was buried. Hidden in the deleted folder I stumbled across while clearing space. My thumb hovered as I opened it, my heart racing faster with each second. The message was simple, the words faint but sharp as a knife. "Mia, I wanted to say how proud I am of you. I know I don't say it enough. Call me tonight if you can." The timestamp made my chest tighten so hard I couldn't breathe. It was years ago. Back when I sat in my dorm room, aching for his voice, wondering why silence was all he ever gave me. He had reached out. He had tried, and I had never seen it. Tears blurred my vision as the truth struck. Sophia. It had to be her. She had taken even this, blocking messages, intercepting calls, twisting the truth while I sat in the dark, believing Dad didn't care. She had stolen not just his time, but his words. The weight of that realization was suffocating. If she had claws deep enough to reach into my phone, to rewrite my relationship with my father, how far did her reach extend? What else had she stolen without me even realizing? Sophia's claws were in my phone, controlling even Dad's words to me. The thought made me shiver, bile rising in my throat. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the room, to tear her shadow from my life once and for all. But I sat frozen, the glow of the screen painting my face pale. The front door clicked open, and Ethan's voice filled the space. "Mia, I'm home." He dropped his keys on the counter, his eyes immediately scanning my face. "What happened?" I turned the phone toward him, my voice barely more than a whisper. "She's been doing this for years, taking things from me I didn't even know I had." His jaw tightened, the anger in his eyes sharp but quiet. He sat beside me, his hand finding mine with a firmness that steadied my shaking fingers. "She won't win," he said. "Not this time, not here." I nodded, but inside I couldn't silence the echoes of her Instagram post. That glass, raised high like a toast to my undoing. Big event coming soon. What was she planning? Why did it feel like my wedding wasn't just my moment anymore, but her stage, waiting for her entrance? Later, as I lay in bed, the dress still hanging untouched in its garment bag near the closet, I stared at the ceiling, my pulse too loud to let me sleep. I tried to hold on to Karen's smile, to the way she had whispered that my mom would have loved this. I tried to believe Ethan's certainty could shield me, but the question burrowed deep, refusing to let me rest. How far did Sophia's control really go? And if she had stolen Dad's words once, what would she take next? 3 months before the wedding, my phone lit up with her name. Even before I answered, my chest tightened. Sophia never called unless she wanted something, unless she had a new way to twist the knife. I pressed the phone to my ear, bracing myself. Her voice oozed smugness. "So, Mia, funny thing, my promotion party just happens to fall on the exact same day as your wedding. Isn't that wild?" I gripped the phone harder, my knuckles blanching. "You're joking." She laughed, a sharp, practiced sound that made my skin crawl. "Oh, sweet sister, life doesn't revolve around your fairy tale vows. Dad already told me he'll be at my party. It's a huge milestone for me. I'm sure you understand." Her words slammed into me like cold steel. I felt my heart sink, every beat heavier than the last. I knew what this was. Not coincidence, not accident. A fabricated event designed for one reason only, to make him choose, to force him to stand under her spotlight while my own day dimmed. I hung up before my voice cracked, refusing to let her hear the tremor in me. But the silence afterward was unbearable. The walls of my apartment pressed in, the air thick. I could hear my pulse in my ears, faster and faster, as if my own body was warning me that the ground beneath me was shifting. Days passed in a blur of denial, but the final blow came in the cruelest way. It was late. The apartment glowed faintly under the soft yellow of a single lamp. Ethan was working at his desk, the clatter of his keyboard the only sound. My phone buzzed. A message from Sophia. My stomach twisted before I even opened it. "Thought you'd want to see what Dad really thinks." Attached was a video file. My thumb hovered over it, hesitation clawing at me. But curiosity and dread were stronger. I tapped play. The screen lit up with Dad's face. Dim bar lights flickered over him, his cheeks flushed, a drink in his hand. He was surrounded by Sophia and her friends, their laughter bubbling like poison. His voice rose above the noise, proud and booming in a way I hadn't heard in years. "Mia's always been a drama queen, chasing attention," he said. His words slurred just enough to sting with drunken honesty. "Sophia's the one who's got it together. She's my real pride." The table erupted in laughter. Glasses clinked. Sophia's smirk filled the frame, her eyes glittering with triumph as she leaned closer to clink her glass against his. The sound of their laughter sliced through me. I dropped the phone onto the couch as if it had burned me, stumbling backward. My chest hollowed, my breath caught in my throat. The words looped inside my head, relentless. Drama queen, real pride. Drama queen, real pride. Dad's laughter in that video was a blade through my trust. I had fought so hard for his approval, spent years excusing his absence, telling myself it was work or grief or anything but choice. But there he was, laughing at me with her, dismissing me in front of strangers as if I were nothing but a burden. I sank to the floor, my knees pulled against my chest, sobs racking through me until I could hardly breathe. The tears came hot and violent, spilling down my face faster than I could wipe them away. Ethan's chair scraped back, and then his arms were around me, strong and steady. But I couldn't take it in. His voice was gentle, urgent, but I couldn't hear the words. The only voice that mattered was Dad's, echoing again and again, hammering nails into the coffin of the hope I had clung to. Why wasn't I enough? Why was I never enough? Hours passed like minutes. My body ached from crying, my throat raw, but the ache in my chest was worse, deeper. When Ethan finally coaxed me into bed, I lay stiff and silent, staring at the ceiling as if answers might appear in the plaster. And then, my phone buzzed again. My hand trembled as I reached for it, terrified it was another dagger from Sophia. But the message wasn't from her. It was from an unknown number. Sophia's hiding something big. Dig into her past. I sat upright, my breath catching. My eyes scanned the words again and again as if they might change if I blinked too long. Anonymous. Vague. but sharp enough to slice through the fog of despair clouding me. Who had sent it? How did they know? And why now? Why drop this seed of suspicion when I was already on the floor of my life, broken? The glow of the screen painted my face pale, the words burning into me like a brand. Sophia had always been cruel, manipulative, jealous. But what if there was more? What if the poison she dripped into my life was only the surface of something deeper, darker? I curled my fists in the sheets, the tears drying on my cheeks as something else began to rise beneath the grief. Rage, a pulsing heat that throbbed with every heartbeat. If she had stolen my father's pride, if she had orchestrated his betrayal, if she had spent years intercepting words meant for me, then maybe it was time I pulled apart her mask. The anonymous text felt like both a warning and a lifeline. My world had collapsed in a single video, but in the rubble, that message sparked something else. Curiosity. Resolve. Sophia thought she had won, but maybe, just maybe, the truth was still waiting to unravel her. The week before the wedding, I sat across from Robert in a coffee shop near the Santa Monica Pier. The smell of roasted beans wrapped around us, the low hum of conversations blending with the hiss of the espresso machine. Outside, the sea breeze pushed through the open window, carrying faint salt into the air. My fingers traced the rim of my mug, the warmth grounding me as I tried to find the courage. Robert. My voice was small, softer than I intended. He looked up, his eyes patient, the kind of eyes that always seemed to read what I was too afraid to say. I swallowed. Would you walk me down the aisle? He leaned back slightly, studying me. For a moment, silence pressed between us, broken only by the clatter of cups at the counter. His lips curved, a smile filled with both pride and something sorrowful. Mia, I'd be honored. More than you know. Tears blurred my vision. Karen had told me about his past, the father who turned away, the years of trying to fill a void left by rejection. And here he was, choosing me, giving me something I had craved my whole life, someone steady, to stand beside me. You deserve to have someone at your side, Robert said, his voice gravelly but firm. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise. I reached across the table, squeezing his hand. My chest loosened with relief. Thank you. I can't think of anyone better. The morning of the wedding dawned with a brilliance that felt almost cruel. Clear skies, golden light spilling across the ocean, the air sharp with salt and promise. The Santa Monica beach shimmered, waves rolling in rhythm like nature itself was preparing to witness my vows. Rows of white chairs lined the sand, draped in ribbons, the hum of guests, mingling, carried on the sea breeze. In the bridal tent, Karen adjusted my veil, her hands trembling. Her eyes shone with tears that refused to fall. You're gonna be a gorgeous bride, Mia. Your mom would have loved this. Her words hit me like both balm and blade. My throat tightened, and for a heartbeat, I let myself imagine Mom's laughter filling the space, her hands smoothing the fabric of my dress. I blinked quickly, swallowing down the ache. Karen's steady warmth anchored me, but the moment cracked when Liam appeared. My cousin, older by a few years, his face pale, his phone gripped so tightly his knuckles showed white. Mia, he whispered urgently, tugging me aside from the tent flap. You need to see this right now. Confusion flooded me. Liam, the ceremony is starting in minutes. What? It's about Sophia. He cut me off, thrusting the glowing phone into my hands. My stomach turned as I scrolled. Text after text from Sophia lit up the screen. Dad thinks my promotion party is legit. Too easy. Just a hangout with friends, but he'll skip her wedding for me. Pathetic. And remember those emails? Totally faked. She never knew what hit her. My chest caved in, the words blurring, bile rising in my throat. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped the phone. Liam's voice cut through, low and steady. Sophia's party was a lie, just a setup to hurt you, Mia, and she's been sabotaging you for years. Here's the proof. The weight of it pressed against me. Every suspicion I had carried suddenly confirmed in glowing text. My breath hitched, the veil clinging to my damp cheeks. And then came the commotion. Heads turned in the crowd, whispers rising like wind before a storm. Dad was striding down the sandy aisle, late, his suit creased, his jaw set. But his fury wasn't aimed at Sophia, it was aimed at Robert. I should be the one walking her down that aisle. His voice cracked through the ocean air, sharp enough to silence the guests. Not you! You think you can replace me? Gasps rippled across the rows. My knees wobbled, heat flooding my face. Humiliation and anger twisted together in my chest. Robert stood steady at my side, his jaw tight, but before he could speak, Liam stepped forward, holding out the phone. "Uncle David," Liam said firmly, "you need to see this." Dad snatched the phone, irritation carved deep into his features. His eyes scanned the screen. Slowly, his face drained of color, the bluster in his stance faltering. Sophia's messages glared up at him, undeniable. For the first time in my life, I saw my father stunned into silence. His hand trembled as he thrust the phone back at Liam, his jaw working. Without another word, he spun on his heel, storming down the beach toward the parking lot. His own phone was already at his ear. "Sophia," his voice boomed, carried even over the surf. "We need to talk, now!" The murmurs of the guests swelled, shock rippling through the air. My veil whipped in the wind, tangling in my hair, and I fought to steady my breath. My heart was a war drum in my chest. Robert's hand closed around mine, grounding me. Ethan's eyes met mine from the altar, steady, unwavering, his whole presence a silent promise. Inside me, a storm raged, shock at the truth finally being exposed, relief that I wasn't delusional, wasn't the drama queen Sophia painted me to be. Liam's texts had lit up Sophia's lies like a flare in the dark, and as the crowd's whispers faded into the crash of waves, one thought anchored itself in me. Maybe finally her web was unraveling. Dad's voice cracked through the sea air, faint but sharp, carried on the wind as he strode down the beach with his phone clamped to his ear. "Sophia, you lied to me. Don't twist this. Don't you dare." His words fractured against the crash of waves, and then silence. My veil fluttered against my cheek, tugged by the salty breeze, and my heart felt like it was tearing between hope and despair. The guests murmured uneasily, their whispers rising and falling like another tide. I stood stiffly in the aisle, Robert steady at my side, his hand grounding me like an anchor. Across the sand, Ethan's eyes locked on mine, calm, unwavering, silently asking me to breathe, but I couldn't. I could only imagine Sophia's voice on the other end of that call. Sly, slippery, spitting half-truths until the moment Dad finally saw through them. And then the inevitable sound of a call ended, leaving him shouting into emptiness. Later, word would come that she had vanished to Florida, slipping away once more like smoke, leaving destruction in her wake. That was her way, always running before the consequences could catch her. Rage burned in me, hot and merciless. She had stolen my father's pride, twisted his love, poisoned years of my life with silence. And now she was running again, but grief clung just as hard, whispering through the cracks of my anger. Even if she was gone, the damage she'd done was still here, still mine to carry. Karen appeared at my side, fussing with my veil as though smoothing it could mend the fracture in my chest. Her voice was soft but firm, a mother's command wrapped in kindness. "Sweetheart, you can still have your moment. Don't let her take this too." Robert's voice followed, low and solid. "You asked me to walk you down the aisle, Mia. I'm here. Let me be here. Don't let what's missing overshadow what's right in front of you. I blinked hard, the tears threatening to spill, and looked past the rows of chairs. There it was, the seat I had saved for Dad. Empty. That single absence cut deeper than any of Sophia's smirks. I had imagined him there so many times, smiling, proud, standing tall as though the years of coldness had never existed. But reality was a hollow chair, glowing like a wound under the fairy lights. Ethan stepped close enough to take my hand, his thumb brushing against mine. "Today's about us, Mia," he whispered, his words a tether pulling me back from the edge. "Let's make it ours." His certainty steadied me. Maybe he was right. Maybe this wasn't about shadows refusing to let go, but about the light I could choose now. The ceremony began just as the sun dipped low, scattering gold across the horizon. Fairy lights strung between wooden posts blinked awake, their glow soft against the gathering dusk. The ocean whispered in the background, steady, ancient, unbothered by the weight of my turmoil. Robert walked me down the aisle, his arms solid and unshakable. Guests rose to their feet, their faces bathed in twilight glow, their smiles a fragile kind of reassurance. Each step I took was heavy but deliberate, each footfall a choice to move towards something new instead of drowning in what was lost. When Ethan reached for my hands, the world fell quiet. His vows were simple, unpolished, but each word felt carved from truth. He spoke of laughter in dark nights, of partnership in chaos, of holding me steady when storms threatened to pull me under. When it was my turn, my voice trembled, but I let the words spill from every scar and every dream I carried. I spoke of love chosen, of family built, of resilience forged in absence. As I said the words, Ethan's eyes never left mine, his gaze holding me together even as my chest ached with the hollow shape of Dad's missing presence. Applause rose around us as we kissed, the ocean roaring behind us like it had always known this was where we'd end up. For a fleeting moment, it was perfect. The veil lifting in the wind, the fairy lights shimmering, Karen's proud tears glinting under the glow. And yet, even in that perfection, my gaze drifted to the empty chair. It sat among the celebration like a ghost, silent and damning. No matter how fierce the love that surrounded me, a piece of me still ached. Would Dad ever change? Would he ever see me? Not through Sophia's lies, not through his own pride, but truly see me? The question pressed against me like the tide, relentless and unyielding. Ethan's hand was warm in mine, a living promise of the life we were choosing. Robert's presence was proof that love can come from unexpected places. Karen's smile reminded me that belonging can be built. But the absence of my father was still a shadow, clinging to the edges of my joy. As the music rose and laughter spilled across the sand, I pressed my forehead to Ethan's, breathing in his steady presence. Maybe reconciliation was too fragile a dream. Maybe I would never get the father I deserved. Still, as I stood there wrapped in vows and fairy light, one truth settled in me like a tide pulling back to reveal smooth sand. I was no longer defined by his absence. I had chosen my family, my future, my love. My vows were everything, but Dad's absence was a shadow over my heart. The last echoes of Hawaii were still in me, the crash of waves, the scent of plumeria drifting on the breeze, the soft grit of sand stuck between my shoes when Ethan and I unpacked our suitcases. We had laughed ourselves breathless under sunsets that looked painted, shared quiet mornings on the balcony while the ocean whispered below. For a week it felt like the world had let me exhale. But peace has a way of dissolving when reality calls, and mine did, literally. My phone buzzed with unheard voicemails. I almost ignored them, but the weight in my chest told me whose voice I would hear. When I pressed play, Dad's voice came through raw, uneven. "Mia, it's me." I was so blind. I let Sophia's jealousy twist everything. I see it now. I'm sorry for failing you." The words cracked like something fragile in his throat. Another voicemail followed. "I should have been there at every step. I should have seen you. Please, can we talk?" And another. Each message carried the same broken cadence. Apologies, confessions, desperate pleas. His voice was no longer the distant flat tone I had known for years. It was stripped down, naked with regret. Ethan pressed closer on the couch, his arm anchoring me as my chest tightened. I had imagined this moment countless times, played it out in my head with 1,000 different versions. But hearing it, the realness of his remorse, was heavier than I expected. A few days later, I agreed to meet him. The cafe was tucked into a corner of LA, its wide windows glowing with warm yellow lights. The smell of roasted beans, cinnamon, and baked bread wrapped the air like comfort. I sat at a corner table, my hands folded tightly around a steaming mug, fingers twitching against the ceramic. When Dad walked in, he looked smaller than I remembered. His shoulders slouched, his face drawn, his eyes rimmed with exhaustion. He carried no armor now, just guilt. He sat across from me, and for a long moment we said nothing. Only the hiss of the espresso machine filled the silence. Then finally, he cleared his throat. "I was wrong, Mia," he said, his voice low but firm. "I let Sophia get in my head. I thought I was protecting her, but I was blind. Blind to what she was doing. Blind to you." His hands trembled as they cradled the mug. I wanted to throw the years of silence in his face. I wanted to ask him why it took losing me to realize what I had been worth all along. My fingers traced the rim of my cup, the bitterness pressing against the longing in my chest. "I can't undo the past," he said, eyes glassy now. "But if you'll let me, I want to try." My throat tightened. The anger and the ache inside me clashed, leaving me unsteady. Finally, I whispered, "Trying means showing up. Not just words, not just voicemails. Show me, Dad." His shoulders sagged with relief and shame all at once. "I will." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a fairy tale reunion, but it was a first step. Weeks later, I watched him sit at a dinner table with Ethan, Karen, and Robert. Fairy lights draped above us glimmered softly, casting a glow across clinking plates and quiet laughter. Karen told a story from her classroom that had us all chuckling. Robert teased Ethan about his failed attempt at grilling, and Dad, hesitant at first, joined in, his voice unsteady but trying. For the first time, I saw him there. Not the ghost of a father I chased, but a man stumbling toward presence. And in that moment, I felt both the ache of everything Sophia had stolen and the warmth of what I had built despite her. Chosen family had held me steady. Ethan's unwavering love, Karen's nurturing warmth, Robert's steady wisdom. They had been my rock when blood failed me. And maybe, just maybe, Dad was learning how to earn his seat at that table. But the shadows don't vanish. Late one night, after the plates were cleared and laughter lingered like perfume, my phone buzzed again. A new message from Sophia. "Need space for now. Maybe we'll talk." Her words stared back at me, vague, slippery, unfinished, like a ghost refusing to fade. I read it again and again, my chest tightening, my mind bracing. She was still out there, still weaving her own story, still capable of breaking whatever fragile healing I was building. But when I looked up, I saw Ethan drying dishes, Karen pouring tea, Robert leaning back with a satisfied smile. My chest loosened. Sophia's text was a ghost, but my new family was my rock. I leaned back in my chair, letting their laughter wash over me. Forgiveness, I realized, didn't mean erasing the pain. It meant choosing to build something stronger alongside it. Boundaries protected me. Love chose me. And reconciliation, slow, imperfect, fragile, was still worth reaching for. So now I'll leave you with this. Have you ever had someone step up when family let you down? Have you ever built love out of betrayal's ashes? Share your story in the comments. I want to hear it. And if my journey struck a chord with you, hit like, subscribe, and stay with me for more stories that just might make you rethink everything you thought you knew about family. Because in the end, family isn't just who you're born to. Family is who shows up.